Okay, so last week I was telling you about what creativity. Oh, you had something for us about the creativity.
Yeah.
That's what you promised. Oh yeah, I have it in email and in writing, you know. So. Mm-hmm.
Actually what happens is the color finds actually when your brain is made of holes and stuff like that, so it has all these holes around you, so it's a bigger gap of attention.
Mm-hmm.
And what they found is most novelists and people who are creative are more creative and 8 times more likely to have issues. So really interesting in a creative person is it's not just all kinds of brain. That's why they're really abstract and
Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay. So I'll add the genetic parts to my description of what the creativity is all about. Yeah. Okay. So as I told you that you should be creative, like analytical, but also creative, I would like to talk about designing alternative concepts for your solutions. Generally, the thing is that, like Mark was mentioning in his first lecture, quite some things about designing alternatives. I will get back to it again. But actually what designing alternative concepts is all about is like to explore the design space that you have around yourself. Because like it's often that we kind of get the first idea and then we keep on following that particular idea. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that the first idea is the idea where you know the least about the whole context of what you're trying to design. So like, it's like you didn't really explore any alternatives and options into what you're trying to design. And the thing is that there is always more than one solution to the problem. So like there's not like if you have the first idea, doesn't mean that this is the only idea that can solve the problem that you are trying to design. So actually there can be more and more different things that you can propose to solve the problem. Like you can get lots of different things from a piece of stone, right? So the problem is like the piece of stone, and then you can approach it in different ways and solve it in different ways. And what is really important to understand, especially when you start designing things that are put in a business context, is that design is always a compromise. So like you will have stakeholders who will be trying to tell you that there is a lot of different constraints and must-haves and must not haves to create the solution. So like you will always get these kind of comments and constraints and obstacles on your way. And when you start designing alternatives, you give these people an option to choose from something. So rather than just facing them with one particular solution, you present them with options, and then they can, first of all, they can get a bit more open-minded because they see a safe solution, and then they can see look with an open mind to more adventurous solution. So basically, you give them the space to be comfortable with the choices they are making. So actually, what is this whole thing with designing alternatives? First of all, you are validating your ideas. So you can have plenty of different ideas, and when you kind of try to make them a little bit more tangible, then you have something to present to validate the idea that you actually got. It gives you a freedom of choice because, like, when you commit yourself to the first solution, to the first idea that you've got, you're sort of stuck with it. So, like, I've got those students who would come to me and cry almost with tears or sometimes with tears, telling me that, like, someone didn't like their solution. And of course, like, when you're in the early stage of a design process, like when you're in any stage of a design process, everyone is going to criticize what you design. That's the fate and the destiny of a designer, being criticized. But especially in the first phases, everyone wants to contribute and want to add some ideas. And if you have just one idea, it feels a lot like criticizing, which may not necessarily be that. So if you have a number of ideas, at least, you kind of spread the feeling of annoyance over a few of them. And then, like if one is badly criticized, at least you are not as attached to it as to to all the others. And there's another thing, which is the deep understanding of your choices. So basically, if you design alternatives, you have to think about the problem or the solution from different perspectives. So you start more and more understand why you are choosing certain things over others. So, for example, if you are trying to, it's like you are a perfect example. Like, thank you for coming. Jonathan is designing something that helps people who had a stroke. And then he can help in very many ways. And this is actually the question that I keep on asking him. So that's why it's, again, so fresh. You can do it as he can do it as a tool. He can do it as a game. He can do it as a support system. There can be different approaches to solve the problem that he's facing. And just thinking in terms of alternatives gives you those options on how you can solve that particular problem. So a generally known object, right? A device, exactly like the one that I have. So often when you think just in terms of one solution, so like one concept that you have to deliver further on, you think of making it smaller, lighter. So you don't question the device itself. You just try to make it. You change its parameters. It's called incremental concept development. So you are changing elements in a very incremental, evolutionary way. But if you allow yourself to go and create alternatives, then you give yourself a chance to create something like this. Not particularly beautiful, but there is something in it. But you can think also about something like this. Or maybe about something like this. And then just by the fact that you give yourself a chance to create alternatives, you are not getting stuck in designing something which is totally incremental. Because you can go crazy with some ideas in the end, these are like just the initial ideas, so you can throw them away in the next stage. But at least it gives the freedom of your creativity to go wild and just to explore what's out there. So what is this design concept that I'm talking about, this alternative? First of all, it's not a solution. This is the most important thing. You are thinking in terms of concepts, of ways of addressing the problem, but not yet in terms of final solutions. It's also not an exploration of the problem. So you are not trying to figure out with different design things like what the problem really is all about. You already done that. Now you are really thinking in terms of what should come next. But this is also not a visualization of possibilities. So often, what people do, they kind of draw it like, okay, so I'm going to have a mobile app, and I can have it drawn in that way, like, using Metro, or maybe Apple style, or maybe some other style. This is not about the beautifying of your one concept. This is about thinking about different concepts, which is really important. And what is important are the ideas that you have behind these concepts. So, like, why would I ever think of designing this in this and that way? So basically, here you can imagine that this is based on rituals. So the idea was like, okay, how can you drink tea in different cultures? So the ritual was the idea behind designing the kettles. So this is something like you create something that becomes sort of a criterion for coming up with a design with a design alternative. I will talk about it later. So one important thing with designing alternatives is that they question status quo. So like, because they are not incremental, they are like revolutionary. They go and they question what is. Like, does the mug have to be a mug? What could be a different way? So an example, probably you've seen many of these shops. I've got a colleague in Warsaw at the academy, and he has one of these kind of stores, like a bit cooler T-shirts. And he is absolutely pissed with the fact that technology came in a way of him selling T-shirts. And he thinks like, this is how I've done it. I don't want the world to change, so I have to do my own business in a different way. And he's like kind of annoyed with the fact that you can buy T-shirts online, you can design and buy T-shirts online, you can go to shops and design T-shirts in the shops and get them delivered to your home. And that basically wearing T-shirts and buying T-shirts stopped being a manual thing of going to a shop and paying for a piece of cloth. This became sort of like a cool thing to do. People want to be identified by their T-shirts. This is something this is sort of a statement of who I am. So, and him having a regular T-shirt store, that pisses him off. It's just like he can't really stand it. Because he never thinks in terms of alternatives. He doesn't think, he only thinks of incremental development of his business. He doesn't think in terms of alternatives of how else I could do my business. So this is what it gives you like in a longer, like in a broader sense. And Louis Pasteur said that chance favors the prepared mind. So also, getting a really great idea comes to you when you are open-minded to explore many different things, right? So yeah, this is the way to actually get yourself into something truly new. So this is who knows what it is? Yeah. So basically, for many years, there were actually like tons of studies. I've studied these studies about like how all these cockpits should be designed so they have a lot of manual buttons because the people in the plane, the pilots, they have to really understand the interaction. It has to be physical and it has to be really understandable, and things should be separated and so on because it's safety above all. So the cockpits were getting more and more designed in that way, like more and more in a physical form. Like there's like many environments that actually still do that. And the status quo is like, this is safety, so no one dares to question that. So what they do, they design another plane with another set of these kind of cockpits. And of course, the buttons are better positioned, and like the screens are bigger, and there is like better information. Their information architecture improves and things like that. But still, they stay the same. And if you start thinking in terms of alternatives and experimentation, like I told you before, you can actually see this. And it turned out that they actually did an experiment with that. They gave pilots tablets, and it turned out to be a huge success. Actually, many pilots are using tablets these days to operate a large part of the plane. So yeah, so now when you are asked to switch your mobile phone off, it's not because it disturbs the machine; it's because it disturbs the tablet. so basically, this is something that if you would just question this and said, okay, let's redesign it completely and put it into a tablet, everybody would scream loud. But if you say, okay, but let's explore the option of having a tablet in the cockpit, then you can explore these things, and then you can slowly move more and more technology into this, or maybe you move it to something else. Maybe it's wearable technology that should be applied there. I don't know. Another example again with tablets. This is something that Virgin Mobile did. Virgin America at the airlines. So basically, you've got those online entertainment systems in the planes. The ones that are attached in front of the seat. They are extremely expensive, not very efficient, easily breakable, and very costly when it comes to service and maintenance. And yet they are put in every single plane that's flying around the world. And it's because that's how it has always been. So like the airlines, they are busy designing the planes and not the onboard entertainment systems. So they are sort of just putting the exact same thing that was put there over and over again. And Virgin Airlines, they decided, okay, how about giving people tablets? So they enter a plane they get a tablet, they use the tablet throughout the whole plane, and you just leave it when they are, leaving the plane. They are a captive audience, so they cannot run away with those planes. There's like no way to run. so yeah, why not trying this? And they did this, and it turned out to be a huge success in many ways. First of all, you can walk with it. So like when you are watching your movie and you want to stretch your legs, you are not stuck with in your chair and like kind of there, but you can just take it and then just walk around the plane. It's cheaper. It's more efficient. You can upload the games. You can let people, play their own stuff if they want to. Like, there's a lot of advantages. But also, like, this was tested as an alternative to something that was already there. So it wasn't really focusing on like what we have and like how we can improve that, but like, okay, how else we could get there? That could be, serve a similar purpose or maybe other purpose and then get appropriated to the purpose that it's actually serving right now. So basically, the alternatives give you chances to actually change the whole model of what you are doing. And there are two rules to follow when you are designing alternatives. Only two. One is like there are no stupid questions. If you ask yourself the most like how about that I do it this way? Just try it out. Like don't reject the idea before you actually make it tangible. Just because your brain tells you that this is stupid one way or the other. Often this is like, like we've got this like old brain in our head, like called amygdala. And this, yeah, the lizard brain also called. And this part of our brain is sort of scared of change, and it just pushes messages to us that we should not experiment. And then, so this kind of discarding your own ideas at the very, very early stage is usually because of that. So like you sort of be afraid of doing something just because, like your brain tells you that it's that's a stupid idea, for example. And there are no two crazy ideas. Actually, in the craziest, the most ridiculous, outrageously impossible idea, there are some snippets that can be actually implemented. And sometimes these snippets are those like ingenious ideas that you can implement into something which is actually quite doable right now. So just remember about these two things. And now I'd like you to do an exercise. Everyone gets a sheet of paper and a pen. So this is one of the exercises that are used for creating ideas, alternative ideas for solutions. And I'm using here, I'm not using your project. I'm using an idea of just starting up a restaurant. Like, like imagine that you are all starting up a restaurant and you have to think about how this restaurant could be done. And the whole exercise is called Mission Impossible, and you have to answer a number of questions. Basically, you have to come up with an idea to create a restaurant without a kitchen. You have to come up with an idea to create a restaurant in a place that has no shops. So there's like, people are not coming there. Like you cannot buy stuff for yourself, like to use for your restaurant, and you cannot get people like, dropping casually to your restaurant because they are shopping. And how to create a restaurant that cannot charge for selling food.
Is this all in one?
No, just 3 different concepts, 3 different alternatives. So try to answer these questions and try to come up with 3 different ideas of how you can run a restaurant with one of these constraints. Huh? Sorry?
Can we do a fourth one to answer 3 questions?
Yeah, you sure? No. Just take one at a time. Yeah, but so the idea here is that you kind of question things that are really obvious in your solution, that are like the most obvious things that are always there. So that's the exercise there. No, just one idea for the first, one idea for the second, and one idea for the third. So 3 ideas, like thinking of 3 different concepts of the restaurant. So the first one has no kitchen, the other has no shops around. You can't buy food there, and also no one comes because of shopping to your place. And the third one is like you cannot charge for selling food. Usually you cannot charge for selling drinks, right? So it's the other way. Or you cannot sell drinks. No, just no space with stoves and sinks and plates and nothing. It's just a room. It can have a toilet, but it doesn't have a kitchen. Like the physical space called kitchen. It has no kitchen in the building. That's the constraint that you've got there. So there's no separate space with stoves and things. You still have to prepare these things somewhere, right? Like unless you prepare it all in front of people. Yeah. The second one, so for example, it's on the top of the mountain. No shops, nothing around. Yeah? No, the restaurant has no access to shops to buy food. So like you need to deliver it some way. Coming from India, you cannot imagine a place without shops and people, right? But imagine here, it's like on a Rocky Mountain. Yeah. Oh. Think quietly. Don't suggest others. Because then like everyone will have the same idea, and this is cool to see like how the brain works in different ways. No, it's good to have them different. Just try to challenge yourself, because this is the whole thing. Like if you really turn it around and just think in a different way, it just opens you up to thinking from a different perspective. So that's the exercise. Yeah, the restaurant is quite similar. Ready? Yeah? Ready? Okay. Who starts? Okay.
Okay, so do all three.
You can do the three.
Yeah. So a restaurant without a kitchen, I thought of either an online fast food middleman who would like people bring up and go, oh yeah, I want some McDonald's. That was delivered. So they would go out and get McDonald's for them and take it to them. Or alternatively, they'll just have like a place that they can go to and people would come along, get drinks or whatever. Okay, what kind of food do you want? They're like, I want KFC, so rush out and go get KFC and bring it back.
Okay, cool.
That was why I want to facilitate that whole fast food chain thing. I'm not really an advocate of fast food, but anyway, that's okay. One. A restaurant in a place that has no shops. I thought of an underwater restaurant that had like a view from all the like fish and stuff under the ocean, and yeah. So like if you wanted fresh fish, I could go out and catch it for you and then bring it back in again. Yeah,
Cool.
Things like someone can be delivered. Sure.
So the fish delivers themselves to the restaurant.
Yeah, I want one of those things. And then,
Cool.
Go and jump out with spear.
Yeah.
There you go. $50.
Yeah.
So you cannot charge for selling food. I thought of a venue or a place that people go to and just basically charge an entry fee to get in the door, like $30. And it's basically like that would cover things like an alcohol license. So basically you have to have a license to allow people to drink on site. So basically that's what they're paying for, to cover the cost of the alcohol license and as well as live entertainment. So people would they'd hire people who are really entertaining, like magic tricks or something, or had a really exciting show, and basically the costs that they would incur would also be covered by the entry fee. And yeah, you basically bring your own alcohol kind of thing, and like if you didn't want to bring alcohol, so it's just a big IO entertainment club.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Connoisseurs club.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Yay. The first one I put it on there with ingredients. Yes.
No, why? No, that's a good idea. Yeah?
Oh, cool. Sweet.
Yeah.
And whenever you love fruit or vegetable garden, you make your own food. Yes, you can basket.
Mm-hmm.
The second one, I had a restaurant on Jerusalem.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
The third one was you guys were clear.
Okay.
And my idea for all
Yeah.
Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
this is like in a course for the parent intervention. So basically, that's when you watch the places. Now, like vegetable parent, the rule is that it should be eventually
Ah, cool.
is string.
Yeah, cool. Sounds nice. Very nice. Robin.
For no kitchen, I thought that one of the ideas so that people don't say, hey, why don't I go to the other place? So we could, I don't know, find like a company that makes food that doesn't sell it at their own sort of eateries. Or you know, you could have a communal eating tip where you give people food and they cook it in a big fire. Or everyone gets like microwave homemade food and it's in the microwave.
Oh, I would never go to such a place, but okay. Yeah, but it's an idea.
I know local shops are just need like you pick like a popular tourist place and like restaurants and like
Uh-huh.
or there's people that have like food
Okay.
or yeah, restaurant in a submarine.
Cool. Yeah.
You can't charge people. You do like a weird potluck thing where like people bring in their own food and then other people
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Yeah.
You get some.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Okay. Cool. Charles.
So with no kitchen, I think the best one was getting customers to bring a collection of your own sort of cooked or raw ingredients, and then getting chefs to combine them. So you can bring the components and the chefs make up a meal on the spot for you. Nearby shops, I just thought of like a farm experience kind of thing. So you can go there and pet some animals, and then they serve you up food from like garden and farm and stuff.
Yeah.
Food like your plate kind of thing. And then no charge. I was thinking you could have a restaurant that served free food. So you got massive lines, and then you had to pay to skip the line. Otherwise, it took like 2 hours to get free food.
Okay.
Pay $10.
Oh, cool. Cool. Jonathan.
For the restaurant kitchen, I thought about there's some canned food the chef brought.
Okay.
Yeah. Those without shop, I was thinking like do a restaurant over the river or like you have to use the
Yeah.
they don't catch
Survival of the fittest.
yeah, and the last one, I just thought you charged me for it, but I wanted to stay in restaurant. Just focus on the experience. Like
Yeah.
or free Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Okay, Richie.
Probably for the kitchen. I thought probably like people probably and could actually they can order something shop. They just buy it and
Mm-hmm.
they can actually and the second one is just no shop. I thought probably is in garden or something. That's and then we can come back to
Mm-hmm.
and then you don't charge for selling food. Actually, one is you can actually just provide a kitchen equipment, so you're not actually so people can come there, they can cook, they can eat it. So you're not actually charging for the food you sell for
Using the kitchen.
using the kitchen. Another thing is probably you can actually if you bring some kind of food and you give food, you can actually pick kind of food.
Ah, cool. Very nice. Yeah. Kunal.
Like for families going on picnic or trekking or traveling, so they have to cook their own food, their own people. So restaurant will have like dining space, charge for per show
Mm-hmm.
basis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like trains.
Mm-hmm.
So when passengers are traveling, so they order their food at the station. So
Mhm.
their train became like a whole body like a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be charged for seat.
Uh-huh. Yeah. 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 Okay. Okay. Cool. Cool. By the way, with the first one, the first question inspired me by a guy who he's an Italian guy who has his business in Krakow, and he has just this like a window, like with a really small space, and he sells the stuff that he cooks. So he cooks for himself, but he cooks also for 50 other people at home, and he brings the stuff and he sells it until it all sells out, and then he goes home. And he's like one of the most popular spots in Krakow. Like everyone wants to go there and get the food, and because it's so scarce, like like you really want to be there just to try it out. And this is basically the stuff that he eats that day. That's it. This is like an extra business, so like a completely different idea. Another one with without selling food. There was in Eindhoven a similar idea to yours. You pay for the produce and you pay for using the kitchen, but you're not paying for the meal. So you actually can go to the kitchen, you can pick the things like as if you went to a shop. You pick the things that you want to cook from, and then you give it to the chefs, or you can cook yourself, and then you're being charged by being in the place and for alcohol. So there are actually places like that that they are trying out these kind of ideas. So it seems at first, like I don't know if you have it, but like I usually with those kind of questions at first it's like come on, like there's no idea there, right? Like like you cannot come up with anything, and then like when you start thinking, suddenly there's like more and more and more ideas that come to your mind. And the whole idea is that those alternatives, those different concepts, because actually what you did, you designed 3 alternative concepts of opening a restaurant business, which are different from the typical restaurant business, like a regular restaurant with a kitchen, with everything that you need there. So actually the thing is that though thinking in terms of alternatives supports creative exploration. So you go and you think about crazy stuff. And the master of it is Thomas Edison, or was Thomas Edison. I think I mentioned this already, but he tended to say, I didn't fail, I just found 50 ways in which my idea doesn't work. And actually, if you look at what he was doing, so these are like his sketches. And he kept on sketching and sketching and sketching, and he had like thousands of ideas for hundreds and thousands of ideas per each invention that he created. So actually, I found data that Edison with his staff created over 2,500 sketchbooks, and each of them like 200 to 300 pages. Imagine how many not working ideas were there. And yeah, and this guy is perceived as one of the most creative guys in the world ever. So this is just a way to go. And Mark already mentioned this book, and what Bill Buxton says there, which is like really, really important, is that before you get your design right, you have to get the right design. And this is why I'm torturing especially the master guys like Robin and Jonathan, not to jump to the solutions before you know which direction you want to go. Because it's so easy to start changing and tweaking the technology to get the interactions right, and you can have a great product that no one wants to use. And there's like, the world is packed with beautiful products that no one wants to use. So that's why this whole process of like context mapping and user research and then, analysis and all of it that stops you from actually starting to design and starting to think in terms of solutions. The whole idea is just to get you to find out this exact thing that is going to have an impact rather than to design something that doesn't have any impact whatsoever. So this is the important thing. Like this is the most important thing that I want to tell you. Like before you start designing something, and this is especially to all the engineers. So probably I shouldn't look at you only. This is something that this is intrinsic to every person who deals with technologies. This is something that you want to do. You want to build stuff. This is the first thing that you want to jump into, and this is going into your sweet spot and getting the design right, but not getting the right design. And I've been once listening to a presentation of a research program director, Emil Arts from Philips Research, and he was telling stories about a number of products that they designed, that they invested years of research to get the design right, and then they put it on the market, thinking that it's gonna be like a major success, and it wasn't bought by anyone. So actually, one is an analog of HeatLab, an iCAD. This is something that was developed for 10 years or something, maybe 9. They were doing tests and more usability tests and faces and expressions and emotions and whatever else, and ideas of how it should be used. And they decided, okay, it's so cool that we are going to spin it off and put it as a startup. They did it. They invested a lot of money, like shitload of money into it. And there was only one other university that bought it, and no one else, to do more, getting the design right studies on it. So, this is the scale, how far it can go, and then you kind of convince yourself that you are doing the right design rather than the design right. But many things that deal with the elements of technology rather than with the idea, with the vision that you have. This is tweaking the solution. This is not thinking about whether the solution goes in the right direction. Because the whole thing is that, this is your initial idea. And again, an initial idea can have, it's often pretty good. So it's based on intuition, research, many other things that you know about what you're trying to design. So it's not that bad. But, it can be many more. So you have to explore the space before you commit. It's you're guys, or when you're looking for a girlfriend, you don't go for the first one you meet, right? It's just kind of looking around for a bit before committing to someone. So basically, this is the whole thing. You just go and you see around what is out there, what other approaches, what other concepts you can actually use. And then when you do that, there's probably more and more things, you can get stuck in this, search for the best idea. So again, this is not about getting the best idea, but this is getting many ideas. So that's the whole deal of this exercise. And basically, when you finally found something which is promising, or you have combined something that's promising, you can go and keep on improving this and still tweaking this and still changing parts of the concept, but then you kind of choose what you want to do. And Linus Pauling said that the best way to have a good idea is to have lots of ideas. And I so totally hands and feet and everything sign up to it. And really with so many projects that I've done, this is the best way to get something which is really quite successful. And if you think of ideas, this is how many ideas you can have for a simple thing like a webcam. So this is a drawing of Carl Leo, who is one of the designers of webcams. So basically, how do you get to these ideas, right? So you can merge solutions, different solutions, which maybe address different symptoms or different problems that you are trying to address. You can tweak some solutions that you've got, and you can see, okay, what will happen when I change this or when I change that. And you can basically develop pros and cons for every solution that you create. And basically then you can, based on those pros and cons, try to, design something that's really built on a pro, or that eliminates the con. And one important thing for it is using creative stimuli. there are like plenty of different tools out there. This is one of them. This is designed by my colleague Andres Lucero from, he was at Nokia at the time. And these are cards that are stimulating creative imaginary, basically. So you use those cards as a way, as stimuli to look at the problem from different perspectives, from different human needs. You can use pictures, you can use films, you can use anything that is kind of putting you into the mode of thinking of different solutions or different alternatives. So this is totally open. Like, by the way, the cards, I like them quite a lot. And there are like many of different types of cards. Like, so IDEO has their own cards. Like if you search, you will find lots of them. But I would like you to try my favorite cards, which are Dixit. And they were never designed for creative exploration. They were designed for storytelling. So this is a game where you sort of play with the movies and stuff like that. But we started using them a long time ago at Play, at the Telecom, and we use them ever since for many different things, and they give quite surprising results. So get back to your idea of your crazy restaurant, like pick the one maybe that you like the most. I'll give you each 3, or actually no, we will do it in pairs. So like you guys as a pair, you as a pair, and you guys as 3. Yeah. So I would like you to pick an idea for a restaurant that you got, and use the cards to build on that idea. So what else could you do that would make this restaurant be more unique, give a better experience, give something that's not met, that you cannot find anywhere else, right? So everyone gets 5 cards. It totally doesn't matter which cards, because they are all crazy. Just pick one idea for the restaurant and think on the card. So look at the card, tell yourself what's there, and think okay, what can be taken from this picture that could be brought to the idea of the restaurant? Anyone. Just one that you like the most, or like that you find the most, gives you the most potential.
Wasn't the original person in the club pieces to see which is the actual yeah.
You can use one card, you can combine cards, I don't mind. Have 3 additional ideas to your idea restaurant based on the cards.
We know we don't have to think about 3.
Should be like
Yeah.
I guess you get please. I mean, that one's kind of.
Generally that way we can do this.
So
Like a weekend we can.
But you could have like 2 customers.
Yeah, maybe
Like 2
can
shit.
be a-
No,
you can probably
really not.
I'll probably
yeah,
just
okay, even if we don't have
So you
people
can
who
competition
stay in
between
hostels or whatever.
and staff. I think I would use
Yeah. Or maybe like
They will be charged.
Actually, I wanted to ask you, do we build up the ideas with this?
Yeah, so you choose one
So
idea
it's-
that you've got.
Then it's incremental. Upgrade.
Yeah, so yeah, the idea is like, what else can you add to this place
Okay.
that you kind of get inspired by the cards that makes it unique and experience. Yeah.
Plays and stuff.
we can go there.
Even a
Get it animated.
Like
Like the toy.
Yeah.
Mostly people go
Oh,
yeah,
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 we're talking about watching this.
you can even write down.
You can donate your
Babies. Single causes team.
Yeah. I mean, it's a hunting restaurant.
Oh, you finished.
Oh yeah.
Sure,
You can this is was right.
Backyard.
If you have more, just go
Yeah.
on.
No, so it's not actually
Yeah, but
money.
it's kind of like
Yeah,
the
it's
just
money,
so
yeah.
abstract, and yet they
So that
kind of
then use
make
clothes,
sense.
but they should be in good condition.
Yeah.
Yeah. People will actually.
You know, like little mermaid or something. So it's like old.
You had it there? The laundry, when there's laundry, then
See?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, so it's like you got to eat the exact same right.
Yeah.
Some person's talking the whole time. You can't eat.
That is amazing. Yeah.
Which is just a second, yeah.
Stop talking a bit. This is a rare one, obviously, that one was
With them.
Okay, have you got? Do you have 3? Yeah, guys, you?
Yeah.
You have more. Guys, hey, you have 3? Okay. Okay. 2 more minutes.
What's this for that space? Get it shut down. That's the.
That's right.
It's weird to clean up. I guess no one cleans it up. It's like
Yes. It's like we could just have to make it messier.
Okay, guys, done? Over there at the end?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay. Guys, you first. So which idea for the restaurant you chose?
We actually chose the one where customers can actually come to the kitchen. They're paying for using the equipment
Okay.
rather than food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So one idea actually that we started was not just cooking. They can probably do the laundry too.
Okay.
Because usually people go to a restaurant on weekends.
Yeah,
So they can take that because on weekends usually they
Yeah,
wash their
cool.
clothes. So instead
And
of
plus,
washing their clothes.
this restaurant actually is for people who probably don't have a kitchen.
Uh-huh.
So it's useful if they can do their laundry.
Okay. Yeah, but it's nice. Like you put your laundry there, and then you go and you cook and you eat, and then you get your laundry, and then you go back. Nice.
And then there's even another one where you actually get.
Hey! Listen.
You're actually paying for.
The creative phase is over for a moment. Yeah.
You actually pay for a certain slot, like probably 15 minutes or something.
Uh-huh.
So maybe if you're donating your old clothes, if it's of good quality, they can probably give you. If you give a certain amount of, if you're donating certain amount of clothes, maybe you get to use the equipment for,
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically you're not giving money, you're actually helping out.
Uh-huh.
Exchanging clothes.
Okay.
You
You can exchange other things as well, right?
Yeah.
Like so
Yeah,
toys
so
and
Yeah,
cool.
clothes can be like donated to orphanage or anything.
Cool. Very nice idea.
And
Mm-hmm.
also, what we've done is while you're cooking, you actually have someone who takes care of the kids. They use
Yeah, cool. So actually you put the laundry, you start cooking, someone, yeah, and then so you can have like peace and quiet moment to cook. I like it. I think many of my friends would love it. It would be like an escape from having to take care of the kids. Yeah, cool. Really nice. Anything else?
Yeah, and then we thought probably some puppet show, some live show or something, and
Yeah, okay.
maybe a movie or something while they're
Yeah.
cooking.
Okay, cool. Really nice. Really nice. Guys.
We chose a restaurant where you hunt your own meat and pick vegetables from the garden and then chefs cook it for you. Just kind of combining some ideas we had. So we had a master chef kind of cook off at the start where customers or maybe chefs compete, making like an entree, and then the restaurant decides who makes the main. So
Cool.
we've got like all this pressure on one set of people. Discounts based on cleaning dishes after yourself or cleaning up the restaurant after yourself. Obstacle courses to get the next meal, especially seeing it's like a hunting your own meat outdoors kind of restaurant. And yeah, plates balanced on either side of scales so that each plate, if you're at a table, you have to eat at the same rate, otherwise it tips over and throws the meat on the ground or on your shirt or whatever. Yeah, the other ones are a little bit more out there.
Just
Whoever is the most, we've got like we had this one, trying to figure out how you can make the snail move faster. So whoever's the most rowdy gets served first, just to create an incredibly raucous atmosphere.
Okay. Cool. Very nice. Guys, which idea did you choose?
I picked the underwater one where you're
Oh yeah. Okay.
I guess maybe that's better.
Yeah, just we decided that it would be like shelter.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And this one is a rope. It is a rope with a chain and a shaft. We used to share for the same thing. And then you find this one shelter. They suck. They have to go
Okay.
Oh, that one. So it's just like none of our experiences really revolve around food, to be honest. But it's more like creating the atmosphere. Like this one was more for it's the like planetariums or whatever. So it's like an underwater planetarium. So,
Wow. Actually, you can see stars through the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
and the moon and everything. It's actually quite, yeah. Like if it's really like clear water, like and still sea. I had it during the night dives in Red Sea in Egypt, and then you look through and you just see the sky. On what? Yeah, it's basically you have a torch, so that kind of this is the space that you see. But if you go like really on the surface, like you just 1 meter or 2 meters under the water, and then you lie down, and then especially when there's like full moon, then you can really see the sky. It's really beautiful. So yeah. So it's called the cathedral effect, because basically when you have a torch and you look at the rocks or like the corals, you only see a part of it, and it usually looks more like a cathedral rather than like a wall of coral. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Of the subject. Okay. Yeah. 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 But I hope that it, like just having the small exercise showed you that if you use stimuli of any kind, it just makes you think about the solution and the problem that you are dealing with in many different ways. And, it just kind of just pushes you to go further and further and further with the ideas that you had initially. And this is exactly what the designing of alternatives is all about. There's one other way to do it. Come back, please. 13. Yeah, no, yeah. No, but I'm using this one, so I'll just do this again. Oh, maybe, yeah. You're right. I already did it. That's the most efficient and effective remedy to. Okay, there I am. So basically, yeah, it's just switching to the presentation mode. Okay, so one other way to think about creating alternatives is to think about different kinds of users that are going to use your solution. Actually, you can think about them with emotions. So that was actually sharing emotions over distance. So kind of how do you put those emotions, and then you can think about different, really extreme emotions that you want to share. But actually, what typically happens is that you just take some group of users that's radically different from your main user group. So for example, you can take people who are Kamil, one of my master's students. He was designing a solution for navigating people through touch. And he said to himself that he's designing this not for the disabled people, but for the people who have the eyesight and hearing and so on. But on the other hand, his extreme user group was the disabled group of users. So basically, he wanted to design something that is good for everyone, but also for these guys. So basically, when you put yourself this kind of constraint, then you start having different perspective on the designs that you are creating. And this is one of the examples with sharing emotions. This is a project done by Mark Hasenzal. So basically, they were working on sharing emotions over distance. And they actually did it with kids. And there was a question on how kids share emotions. And it turned out that there's a huge difference between girls and boys. Because the girls are they would hug a teddy bear or pet something, and this would be the way to show to their friends that they are thinking about them. With the boys, it's a slight difference. Mainly, if they want to show that they are thinking about someone, they basically want to punch them in the face. This is the way to show emotions when you are young. Probably you recognize it more than me. So basically what they did, they designed something which was called the punching pillow. So actually you had a pillow, and then when you punched it, it would punch back on the other side with your friend, and the friend would think, okay, now he's thinking about me. So see, an extreme user group, young boys who are not really quite keen on sharing emotions in the first place, And if you take them as an example, you can really design something which is quite cool and think of like, okay, how do you share emotions, but making different movements with an object. So that could be an exercise. So we are coming back to the restaurant, and I would like you to. No, that was actually not. That was for your emotion project. Sorry, exercise. So the first thing I would like you to think of is to design a solution for. You came up yourself. Like this is a stressed and not very, well performing female driver or like wannabe driver, and there's the instructor. Like how do you allow them? How would you design an emotion sharing device or like solution for them so they calm down, so they are both kind of understanding what's going on with them, and they can come back to the emotional stable situation. So again, in pairs, just try to come up with something. You can use the cards, you can take more cards, you can just think of it without anything, up to you. Sharing emotions between a stressed trainee and a driving instructor, so that calms them down both together.
Is it for the whole or just the whole learning?
Imagine this is the situation. This is just for this situation. You have a stress trainee, a scared instructor. What would you give them so they can kind of understand what's going on and get relaxed, a bit more relaxed? Like what sort of information they should exchange? That really helps with relaxation. Yeah.
So is this kind of in the context of having like the biosensor that can read?
Yeah, for example. Yeah. But it doesn't have to. No. So just to get you started, and don't use this idea. Like for example, like when the car senses that they are both stressed, it automatically slows down to 20 kilometers per hour, and then you cannot go any faster. So this could be a solution, right? Yeah. Don't think about the solution. This one is off the table. It can be technological. It can be embedded. It can be separate. Like whatever. Like I'm not. This is not about your project that much, but it's just to get you thinking in these terms.
Both having an IV drip with like Xanax, as soon as they get stressed, it's just like, just get real. No, yeah.
Something about you.
Yes, real 1984.
Oh, yes, yes.
You're right. The instructor gets stressed, the driver's seat starts bumping.
Okay, 1 more minute for the idea. That-
And shoulders.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, we were thinking about that. So actually, would make it came.
you got like pressure sensor charging the side plate, and you're gonna have to fight the strap and grips that you know how stress you
Okay, everyone has an idea?
stressing.
There will be more, so. You guys have an idea? Okay, you start.
Your there's like pressure sensors on the handlebars.
Mm-hmm.
So when constructive stress, like and the steering wheel can go when stress,
Mm-hmm.
like music when both the stress,
Mm-hmm.
counting down,
Well,
and either person is stressed, the opposite seat will vibrate.
uh-huh. Okay. Oh my God, these guys would have all the electric chairs at that point, right?
And the seat belt gets tighter if they go too fast.
Uh-huh.
The last one is like there's like human calming pheromones.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, guys. Uh-huh. Oh, maybe we can go with the balance thing, right? With the scale that you guys had for the food. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, just so that the instructor knows that like everyone else also knows that there's something bad going on over there. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Guys.
Yeah, they actually got two ideas. One of them is, generally what happens, you know, don't know what to do next. Then it's like the domino effect.
Yeah.
So probably when stress can realize that the driver is stressed beyond a certain point. Probably do some kind of cues from vibration and then press.
Oh, nice.
So once you get one thing correct, you start.
Yeah, you kind of get back into that. Yeah.
If that doesn't work, they still press probably some AC or some song or some probably.
Okay.
And if that really doesn't work, the car should stop. There's another smiling thing.
Yeah.
Both are really smiling, I'm going to start.
Okay. Cool. Okay, so once more the same exercise. And now imagine that we are here in HIT Lab and you are sharing your emotions with us as the researchers and lecturers, and then we are sharing our emotions with you. So how would you design that? So like there is a reciprocity thing, like kind of sharing emotions in a working space. How would you do that? Sorry? Yeah. Yeah, or maybe like some aggregated emotion place somewhere. I don't know. It's just sharing emotion in a working space like HIT Lab. Yeah, professor student, but also like among the professors and among the students. So just pick the one that talks to you most. Oh God! How appropriate. Oh.
Maybe we can utilize a representation
Professor's eyes sweating with eyes are red color.
Shows us sleepy.
He can see. On the board, they can't see the eyes. Eyes are the best.
No, we can see like the lights.
Remember that people may not necessarily always want to show their true emotions.
Yeah.
That's the tricky business, right? Yeah.
She was watching questions before 8. She got to the grades and that's where
It's just the same as the AI.
Oh.
Sharing emotions, I think, like the anger.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like I could imagine, like I don't know if I told you about those count technologies, like that we've got back in Eindhoven, which was like the fountain that would show the height of the currency. This is something that can be appropriated to like showing like where's the balance between the emotions of the academics versus the student. Yeah. So one other idea that I can give to you as one of the projects that my students did in Eindhoven was it was more about like the mood and the noise. So like they noticed that when people are angry, they raise their voices, and we sit in an open space, and there was an installation of like birds singing songs, and whenever people raised voices, the birds would go away. And then you suddenly, one sound is just gone. So then you are thinking, okay, like what's going on? And then you lower your voice and the birds come back. And it's so simple technologically, like, like these loudspeakers and like a meter. And then you just switch them off and on, and that's it. Yeah.
Is it something like you create areas of where you're going to collaborate and talk?
Yeah. Okay, done? Okay. Yeah. So always a question, what an emotion is, right? Remember when I told you about the punching the robot? That's another way to do it, right? From the punching the robot, you can get the overall stress level of the lab, like people plus punching strength. Maybe you want to build up the mood, and then you want everybody to be happier. So it's like with this freaking fridge, like you open it, you have to smile, and then you are more happy. So that's another way to think about sharing emotions at work. So having this installation on every door of every professor, and then you have to come in smiling.
If you're trying to book something for like a meeting, so you kind of create something from architecture. It's just show them a funny video. I mean, it's just a real light heart.
Yeah, and everybody who calls has a problem, most likely. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So angry. Please calm down, sir.
Okay, done? Okay, guys, how about you? Starting now.
I guess. Yeah. Honest probably. They're stressed out. Probably does not need them to be based on that people. They're really stressed out. So even if you really have to do it, they are stressed.
Yeah. Is it worthwhile?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe a mobile app also which updates this. Then we can then I think take lecture and give a feedback. There's another thing that said actually outside they have a lecture outside. Other programs done, but you can just click it when you go. Actually, other professors. And yeah, also another thing is other classes where there's
Yeah. Yeah, cool.
you can actually,
Yeah.
maybe not in class, but
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that sounds nice. Yeah. Good idea. Yeah. Guys.
I've got emotion seats are all, I mean, kind of the same thing as that, a little door that you can use to figure out whether you want to book a meeting in or not. Tracking professor or supervisor's emotional history over time, so you can make predictions. So you know that you have an assignment, you should tell them on afternoon.
Oh, good one. Yeah. Actually, this might very likely be true. There was a study done, which is really a study that was really talked about. They measured how severe are the how do you, when you're in a court and you have a judge, what does he say?
Oh yeah.
The sentence, depending on whether they were before lunch or after lunch. And it turned out that they are much more severely punishing people when they are hungry. Yeah, really, it was and the number was really significantly valid. So you could really see that there was some correlation there. Yeah. So when you go to a court, feed the judge first. Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Lights showing how much you're thinking or someone in the room is thinking. So you can kind of say how busy they are.
Yeah.
Just areas of the lab that you can kind of work in that indicate to other people how you're feeling. So yeah, busy will go somewhere to yell at people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Customer service that requires you to calm down. You can put through to a person that deals with you.
Yeah. Yeah, but actually with this thing, there is this theory called flow. I don't know if you heard about it. So basically that we have this tendency when we do something that we really like, that we go really deep in a very deep concentration, which is called flow, when we don't realize how time is passing. Gaming is like that. So actually the thing is that there was another study done that measured that if you are in the mode of being in a flow, and you are kicked out of it by an interruption, it takes you half hour to 1 hour to get back into the same mode. So imagine how much damage you might do when you interrupt in the wrong moment. So actually getting this information from your brain about, like, whether you are in a flow state or not would really help to understand where is the right moment to interrupt. And the thing there is that there's also an interesting thing, because we've got those like alpha and beta waves in our brain. And for a long time, the alpha waves were associated with relaxation. Like psychologists thought that those waves get active when we are relaxed, and actually it turned out that this is the deep concentration waves. So that's actually the other way around. So actually these things, and the alpha waves are the easiest to measure, so we can actually really do something with that, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
Also got heat mounted things showing interest in class, so that as you watch, you can gauge how much you need.
Yeah. You see it on your faces. Like, you don't need a map for that. Yeah, especially when we have lectures at 3 o'clock. Yeah. Okay, cool. Guys?
So we had this system, it's like a biometric scanner, like a watch or an EEG machine. Like basically everyone that came into the lab had one. And it was like a big backbone system, and like everyone's emotions would get logged to the server.
Mm-hmm.
And basically people would have like on their watch, or if they were wearing a glass, and basically if you had the Google Glass and you looked at somebody based on their location and stuff, you put like an emoticon on your head, kind of like an instant, and it would basically like tell you how they're feeling, kind of thing. If you really wanted to, you could like look into the history of how they're feeling, and like basically it's like an idea to enable people to like track their emotional progress,
Mm-hmm.
because everyone wants to be happy, kind of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you can kind of tell when you look at somebody, because some people find it difficult to maybe express their emotions, or maybe they appear this way, but really they feel this way. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you can kind of use that as a gauge to interact with them in a certain way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So yeah.
So when I look into your eyes, then I see what mood you are in. Cool. Yeah. 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 I thought that is the professor, and then you kind of nurture them. Oh. Yeah, 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 yeah. 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 Actually, there's one other representation of emotions at work that works quite well, and this is like sort of like a private space that you need. So it doesn't have the emotional bias, meaning that you are not displaying emotions that you may not be willing to share at work. But basically, just by expanding that you need more, private space, it gives people an indication whether this is the right moment to have an interaction with you or not, and they can deduce a lot from the or guess a lot from just the space that you need around yourself. What's going on. Yeah. And also, like the two examples they gave to guys, one was like my students in Eindhoven, they designed, there was an open space, and basically what they observed is that like when people get angry, they raise voices. So they designed like a soundscape, which was like birds, because like people have this ability to push the background noise into the background. So we are getting quite immune to the noise which is repeated over time. And basically the idea was that the birds were like chirping there, and then whenever someone raised voice, which was measured by the birds would go away. And then you would realize that something changed in the soundscape. and then you'd lower your voice, and then they would come back. Yeah, so and very simple solution, like technologically, like cannot get any simpler than that. Yeah, and the other was like I already mentioned it before. It was the one of Christoph's students, the punching robot. So like you sort of go and then you punch the robot, like get to release your anger at work, and then it could get sort of like measured and then represented somewhere. So like how many people are really quite annoyed at the office today. So okay, so see, like if you think of different different user groups. And these were not really extreme. Like I had a Pope as the first one, but then I decided, okay, that's gonna be too hard for this hour. Then you again start having very different ideas on how the solutions could be created. So basically, the whole thing is that alternatives help you to define and expand the design space, and this is the main goal of it. So look at the umbrella, simple thing, right? And then if you start thinking in terms of like what can you do with the umbrella. You can actually create a table out of it. You can create even a higher table out of it. You can create a lamp. And this idea is actually a shower. So like you sort of like you get water from one place and it just spreads on the metal stuff there. So basically the whole thing is that before you really start coming up with the alternatives, you can do it in the way that I showed you. But the one other way to do it is to define the criteria for your design space. So we can actually think in terms of axes and think, okay, like what should my design be? So you can think, okay, should it be cheap or expensive? Like should it be doable now or doable in a year? Should it be analog versus digital? Like this is also one of the dimensions that you can think. Like should it be a service versus a product? Should it be discrete versus ostentatious? Like, should it be something that is like really kind of hidden away and like people cannot see it, versus something that's like really out there in the open? And then you can use these these spaces to these criteria to define your design space, and it's really good to have like those two extremes. They work quite well. And usually, what I do, I design sort of this kind of matrix. And then I put the extremes onto the ends of the axis. And here is like cheap and expensive and playful versus persuasive. And basically start coming up with ideas that fit with expensive and playful, expensive and persuasive and cheap and playful. And then you create more and more ideas, and then you kind of fit in the whole space, and then you can actually have something really nice, or you can start combining things from it. So once you created the alternatives, you can really evaluate them with users. So this is already the first stage when you can start kind of putting the ideas in front of your potential users. So basically, having several alternatives helps you to define, to distance yourself from the ideas. I already told that. Like if you have many ideas, you are not as attached to them as if you have one. It really helps to take criticism. Believe me, like from experience, like with one idea, it's really hard to accept that people don't like things to be designed. If you create many ideas, that's much easier. And there are things that they like, so like you can live with the feeling that you designed something worthwhile. And it also helps to discuss the different ideas with users. So basically, if you present people with a number of ideas, they can kind of relate to them, and then they can look at elements of these ideas. And the whole thing is that we as people, we are not able to think in absolutes. So like if I tell you, what do you think about the smoke? Yeah, you can tall and white and these kind of things. But if I take this versus this, then these are both containers for a drink. But then you can say, okay, this one has this and this one has that, and then you suddenly start comparing them, and it just gives you more and more information about what are the good and bad qualities of what you are designing. So basically, we really, as people, we love to compare things. We are really good at that. We are terrible at thinking in terms of one solution. So, and then the last thing is that, like, thanks to that, you can really choose the elements of your designs rather than to think in terms, okay, should I have a mug like this or a mug like this, right? Maybe it shouldn't be a mug in the first place. Maybe it shouldn't be a can either. Maybe it should be something else. So basically that gives you this chance of seeing like what are the elements and which direction is the direction that you should actually take. So one last example. Yeah, I'm working with the parks recently. So this is one of the parks. This is from this is the park that's in located in a place where I was born, and it was a project that has been done by my master students, the team of 5 girls. So basically, the museum, the park is really poor. So, you know, like this is not a highly touristic place. So they are not getting many tourists coming there, and therefore they don't really have a lot of money. And their primary goal is to conserve the nature rather than to, you know, accommodate tourism. So they always have this huge dilemma in themselves, like what they should do. Should they, you know, spend more money on the nature, or should they spend more money on tourism? So with this problem, they created a museum. And by the way, the people who work in these kind of parks, they are not people from marketing or like, you know, event organizers. These are people who love nature, and they are either, you know, they study geography or biology or like, you know, things that are related to geology and things like that. And they are experts in what nature is all about, but they are not nature in what people as tourists want from these kind of parks and places. So what they did, they created a museum in the park, which is aiming at you know, young kids. Like, you know, usually there are schools coming there, like with like, you know, you have a bunch of like 20, 30 kids coming together. And they created a museum with a lady who, with a very quiet voice, talks words no one understands. So really, like, I went there. I went to the first room. This is. I think that this is the first room. I was bored. I was bored to death. I was just thinking, like, Jesus, when will she? And by the way, you cannot skip the parts because it's like you have to go. So it's like a guided tour. So like she kind of talks, and there's light there, and there's darkness everywhere else. So you have to survive her talking. And she's an amazing woman with a beautiful voice. It's just that that doesn't fit the museum. And the kids who are like, you know, willing to play rather than to stay there and listen to the lady. And also the vocabulary she's using, this is designed for other biologists and geographers, and not for people like who are like, you know, completely not from that field. So when I came, it was like one question, like first question, I said like, did you design it for your buddies, like for other parks, or like did you design it for people who come here? Because obviously that doesn't seem that you designed it for people. Like that was terrible. So basically the problem, so the question that my students got from them was like, how can we change that? So like we cannot obviously remove this whole exhibition because we invested all our money into it without really testing and thinking about it. What should it be all about? So now, you know, we sort of stuck. So like, what can we do to change this and make it more attractive for kids? So, you know, the process was like how I'm teaching you. So like first there was a trend analysis, and what came out from the trend analysis is that the parents these days, they pay more and more attention to the creative development of their children. So this is something that becomes really quite prominent in Europe, probably all over the world. But you know, they were checking this for Europe and for Poland. And basically, the parents are willing to go to places and spend time so their kids can get more creative. So this is quite a strong motivation for them. That was one thing that came out from the trend analysis. That was really the most important thing. So then there was context mapping. That's the team, and there are the guys from the park. They went there to the park. They saw how it all looked like. They you know, walked there, and they were talking to them and like figuring out what this whole museum is, the idea of a museum is all about. And they found out that there is like a number of strong points. So the employees in the park, they love their job. They are really passionate of what they are doing. The museum and the park has quite a rich history. Like actually that comes from the ancient times, because there's one place which used to be a cult place for pagans. So like, you know, it comes from pre-Christianity era. So really rich history, lots of space. Actually, like usually musea suffer from the fact that they have not enough space to put everything there. In this museum, they have like the exhibition is on the ground floor, and the first floor and the second floor is just empty. Like they're like empty, huge, beautiful spaces. They actually, it turned out that the park has an educational program for nearby schools. So like the employees of the park, they go to the local schools and they train kids to understand what knowledge, what nature is all about. So they actually already have some programs there in place. And they have a huge archive of sounds of birds, pictures, like lots of visual materials that could be played with to entertain kids. But there were like a lot of weak points as well. Their visual identity, like actually, I think that you really have to be stubborn to find the museum, because it has a small door, a wooden board saying Nature Museum, and this, I think it's here. This kind of board standing there. This is not exactly that board, but this is like old school pictures, a lot of text. No one would read it, and there's no other indication that there is a museum there. So basically, really terrible. You don't get any information about the museum when you are entering the park. So you actually pay, in Poland, to enter a park, you have to pay a small fee. It's like really tiny, it's like $2 or something. And it is a perfect place to actually say, like, by the way, when you go up there, there's a museum there. No one says it. Like, there's no information on the ticket. There's like no indication that there is a museum. Yeah, I said like the expert is designed for the experts. There's no space for recreation. So when those kids go through this terribly boring exhibition, they arrive at the door and they have to leave. So there is like no place when they can like kind of relax and play and eat and do things, that kids do. Also, like, again, I don't know how it is here, but in Poland, when kids go for a trip, they always want to come back with a gadget. So they want to bring something back home with them, and it should be cheap, but it should be nice. And basically, in the shop, in the museum, there were like terrible things, like very little choice, and actually really ugly. So these were the problems that were found by by context mapping. So then there was user research. They did a number of studies with parents with young kids, and actually they were asking questions about how they spend free time with kids, how they plan the trips, how they plan, whether they go to musea and how they plan those trips, and like how those trips really happen, whether the kids are taking parts in some creative workshops, and like what sort of workshops, what is interesting, what is not, what is the attitude towards ecology and like nature by the parents, and like what sort of things they are teaching to the children, and also what sort of games and what sort of toys they are using. And based on that, there were two personas created. Actually, what we do, I didn't want to put you into that, but what my students usually do, they create virtual personas as Facebook profiles. So actually, Facebook is now full of personas by my students. Yes, and actually people do start liking them, so it's actually quite funny to see that. Some people want to befriend the personas and so on. So basically, there were two personas. One was the mother with two kids coming from Warsaw, and she was quite ecologically aware, and she was really looking for places where she could teach her children about more ecological approach towards life. And there was another mom who was living very close by the park, but she was like, she was not really interested what park was all about, and she was like not really paying attention to what park and nature and this like whole nature reserve thing means to her and to the environment. So these were the two extreme users that they were addressing, and then they went for searching for alternatives. So they were like coming up with lots and lots and lots of ideas. Like you can see here, it was just post-it notes. And they were like grouping them together and putting them into some themes that they thought that could be really cool. And once they created these ideas, they went and tested them with the users again. So one one theme was about ecology, so they thought of having games in the field. So like, you know, that the museum is not only inside, but you can actually go outside and you look for leaves and you have to collect some things, and then you bring the stuff together, you sit together, you discuss these things, draw them, paint them, and so on, and then you you sort of learn how nature works. The other was a deer in one-to-one scale. Deer is this is the biggest animal in the forest, in the park. So basically, you know, like people love to take photos with, like, you know, putting the face into the shape of an animal. So that was basically the idea. So the kids could, at the end, they could actually take those photos and, like, you know, be a deer family or whatever. There was making music from bird sounds. So the idea was that you have something that plays different, you know, sounds of different birds, and you can combine them. You can actually make some music out of it, and also painting face and making masks from leaves. So like you can actually, you know, create a mask that's glued with the leaf from the leaves, and you can put it on a face and play something. So that was one. The other was about legend and magic. Like there's one thing that the region has a very long history, but also there's a lot of legends about it, and actually that used to be a place associated with witchcraft in Poland. So like, you know, the mountains there are like the places where the witches would gather together and, like, you know, come up with some crazy plots to apply on humanity. So first thing, the idea was that you kind of create traces that are visible in the night or like in the dark. So the kids get ultraviolet torches and they have to find the traces, different traces like of animals or maybe of past people and so on. So this is teaching them about history and about legends and about animals. Guide badges. So basically that they sort of have to find different traces there, and they have to find different elements in the exhibition, and then they collect some sort of, you know, badges, and then they come up and they can be called you know, the explorers or, like, you know, guides or whatever, you know, other scheme you can come up with. Again, face painting, it turned to be quite popular by kids, around the kids. So like this time was like characters from legends. So actually you can be painted with a certain paint and a certain character, and then you have to kind of follow this character through the museum. And a shadow theater, so like also like kind of using the things to build certain creatures and then just do the shadow theater. And the third idea was the periodic workshop. So it was more about thinking about like how you survive in nature, what nature gives you, and so on. So it was like building shelters for animals. So the idea was that, you know, there's a huge square in front of the museum, so the kids could gather together and, like, you know, put things together and build bird houses or, like, you know, some feeding spaces for the deers and so on. And then these things could be put then into the forest. Building tents, so that was like more about like creating some spaces where kids can kind of see how they could survive in the forest, and storytelling, so like also telling stories about the forest and about things that are happening. So what was then done? They created mock-ups. Sorry, it's in Polish, but basically you've got the game in the terrain. You have the traces visible in the night or in the dark. You've got the deer. Actually, the idea evolved from taking photos of the faces into creating the full-scale model of a deer, so people can sit on it and then also take photos. There was so in the mountains there's something which is called, I'm not going to try to translate it, and the name doesn't mean anything, but this is like an old rock that kind of cracked through the years, and it's like so you've got this wall which has just huge stones there lying and like nothing else, which is really strange, and like, you know, it's a process that was taking thousands of years, and then this is quite unique for this region. So the idea was to create like this pool, like usually you have pool with balls for the kids to play, and that was the pool with the stones from this terrain, so just to represent what the idea of this whole wall with those rocks really mean. The masks, the shadow theater, the bird sounds, and another idea was to create stamps from the potato. So then they did user tests, and actually they got kids from 5 to 12, and it turned out that these kids are really there's huge age difference between them, and like the younger, like the general thing was like that the kids have really limited patience. So you cannot give them a task for like 20 minutes, like 5 minutes, and then they have to do something else. Like, you know, like if you manage to keep them for like 10 minutes, you are really successful. Then the kids love to play with their hands. They love to build things. They love to glue things and so on. So like, it's not like about sitting them and telling them stories because it bores them to death. You need to give them something that they can really build with their hands. As sound and light was really focusing their attention. So like if you do something with sound and with light, then they are suddenly like really focused and you can keep that focus for a moment. They really need to be active, so like nothing like sitting like you guys. You have to grow up to be able to sit for 2 hours and survive a lecture. So they really cannot be passively listening to anything or like passively participating. They are really fascinated by like a mystery and like the atmosphere that they don't really understand what's going on. So like the traces, they were like huge success. They loved it. They loved it. They actually, the parents were asking where they can buy this ultraviolet paint. So the paint, so you know they can play at home with the paint. And basically, the kids wanted to have tasks and they wanted to have challenges, and that was something that was really motivating them to do things. Otherwise, they were bored. So from that, they brought all these 3 ideas together, and they created 3 concepts. There was a concept of legend. So like the themes stayed sort of the same. But basically, the ideas within each concept grew much smaller. So with the legends, it was like creating your own legends. So like the kids were asked to, you know, like get the cards with descriptions of different legends and just put them together and create their own stories, which were supposed to be unique. The idea of the shadow theater was really successful because it engages kids and they really love to play with it. Creating the potato stamps with the traces of animals, that was really something that kids loved. They wanted to make masks, but the leaves were much too complicated for them. So the idea was to create like the patterns of faces of different animals, and the kids just cut out the holes and just put it on their face with the rubber here, and that was it. And there was also another thing that got found out in the user test of the concepts, that the kids would love to see and understand how birds build their homes, their nests. So actually the idea was that you actually have to build a nest, and that was something that was really engaging kids as well. Then with and actually the last ones, the stumps and the nests, that was the ecology program. So these were the things that were put into the ecology program, and the idea for the do-it-yourself, it got turned from like periodic workshops into do-it-yourself. So the kids actually are learning some manual skills. It was building the tents, building the house trees, tree houses. So the idea was like, there are no trees around the museum, and you cannot go into the forest because that's a reserve. But basically, it was the idea that you put some poles there, and then the kids can actually build stuff around those poles and then play there. And create basically in that way, they are sort of building their own playground. So, you know, like one kid gets a task to build a house, the other gets to build a slide, and so on. So basically, of course, with help of professionals, but, you know, the kids feel that they actually build the whole thing themselves. And also this bird houses, that was really quite successful, and it was an idea that they could actually do. And there were also ideas that which should be used in the museum. So they were like traces in the dark, sounds of birds, magic box. Magic box is something that keeps on coming back. Basically, the kids love to put hands into a box in which they don't know what awaits them. So, you know, like putting the box and just trying to find out what's there. And this pole with the balls that was representing this rock structure that was really quite successful as well. Outside the museum, the idea was to have the games in the field. So actually, there was like kind of make a connection between the nature and the museum itself, so that there should be not separate, but they should be put together. The idea of the deer was really loved by the kids. They really wanted to climb the deer, and also to have this playground, so like to have things that they can build, but they can also use. And finally, shopping at the museum. there was the idea that there should be really attractive items that are available on the market. So the idea was not for the shop, for the museum to create their own gadgets, but just to buy it from the local artists and just exhibit them there, and then you know, like, everybody's happy. There should be offer for kids, so like those gadgets should be aiming at kids because mainly kids come there. So collaboration with local producer and ecological produce. So there is actually quite a lot of ecological produce around this region, and it is a perfect place to actually reinforce the idea of a park as a place where nature remains untouched with the ecological produce that could be actually sold there. Okay. So that's the example, and you see, like, with those many alternatives, you actually get something that gets much more condensed and much more to the point and like fit into the needs. But basically, you have to have this large scope of many ideas to bring them down to those few or one that you are going to actually build at the end. So summarizing, alternatives are a way to diverge your ideas. This is it. They give you a chance to be creative and explore concepts that may be considered as too crazy otherwise. So this is really the moment when you can go crazy and there are like no strings attached to play with the concepts that you might have in mind and just see what comes out of it. They broaden design space and show new directions. So this is the whole idea that you should not focus on something which is like quite small and confined, but you should really explore as much as you can. They help to experiment and quickly validate the results. So like just by drawing them, we'll talk about paper prototype or like, you know, low fidelity prototyping next time. But actually the whole idea is that you just create something which is like very simple and you go to the user and you test it. And you test it in a very early stage. So you can actually get a lot of ideas confirmed or rejected before you committed yourself to anything. And yeah, they help users to do sensible comparisons. So, you know, like if you come again with one idea that people are not, so this is the curse of focus groups. People usually, like with the traditional market research focus groups, the users are, the participants are exposed to one idea and they are kind of playing with the elements of this idea and it never really gives a good result. So here, like when you have many ideas, people can really focus on them. Thank you very much. And there will be another assignment, but I'm going to give it to you on Thursday after you survive the second one. Okay.
Oh,
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The museum. Did you get any? You kind of showed what you did, but you didn't talk about the feedback in terms of the long-term.
So they are actually implementing this now because this is the project that ended in June. So this is this year, yeah. So this is just that was one of the projects that I was running when I was back in Poland. But actually, I'm still in touch with the guys because I'm helping them. They are really clumsy with their design. So